No, that was me,
Oh, that was
Michelle.
you.
Nick used to have this computer. Yep.
Oh, okay, that makes sense then. Okay.
I can text him.
I got it. He was texting me. Sorry, I was confused because I thought I saw him, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. Well, it might take him a couple minutes, but we'll get started. So I'm gonna record this. Or if Michael, can you either record or give me permission?
Yeah, I'm live streaming this on YouTube, so that recording will be available there.
Okay, got it. Thanks, Michael.
Justin, are you actually in a library or is that just like your background?
My background. I'm actually in a Starbucks.
Is someone able to send Nick the link to the Zoom? It's on the city calendar too, right?
I'll forward the email.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Okay, well, hello everybody. Thank you for joining on Zoom. I'm sorry for kind of last minute change. I had to come to DC for a conference today, so that's why I'm remote today, but glad y'all could make it. I'm sorry I couldn't send an agenda out, but like I said, I haven't had email. So what we want to do today, we'll give a couple quick updates, but the three things I want to try and accomplish: one is talk about our budget for 2023, two, discuss those grant guidelines that many of you commented on, and three, just kind of give a roadmap for 2023 and what that looks like. So first, just some quick housing updates. The anti-displacement grant is like coming to an end in December. So that's, the grant that funded Hudson Roots and, my position. And so as of January, all of the program activities will now officially be using Housing Trust Fund money. And so that's kind of a transition where we've been using grant funds and it's been going through HCPA. But as of January, everything comes through the Housing Trust Fund first. In terms of things we're working on in the city, we're still working with our CDBG housing rehab to get those homes selected. We have the Kearney scattered site housing proposal that the Common Council should be voting on soon, this month or next month. And I've been receiving some of the draft reports from our housing consultant BFJ regarding their recommendations for some of our policies about things like our vacancy law, about an overlay zoning, stuff like that. So I'm giving them some feedback on drafts, and then maybe in January I can share some of those reports with you all and think about whether some policies that we might want to focus on in 2023 regarding housing. So those quick updates from me. Does anyone want to share any quick housing updates? If anyone had any. Okay, cool. Hey, Nick, welcome.
Thank you. Sorry, that took me a while to get on.
No worries, sorry. Okay, so the first thing we're going to dive into is looking at our budget. So as some of you remember, we had proposed a budget that was going to be for Q3 and Q4 for 2022, and then a budget for 2023. Basically, between the different delays of this board and HCDPA meeting, HCDPA decided that it didn't make sense to do any programs in 2022. So the people who had met at the October board meeting had talked about doing, funding Hudson Roots and looking at some studies, but HCDPA decided that it was too late in the year to kind of run anything. So given that, I have kind of a proposed new budget. So I know it's the first time we're going to look at this and it might be hard to look at on a screen, but we can at least highlight some points for discussion. Okay, so can you all see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. So basically, originally we had this is what we had sent, except that we had put some money to HCDPA for 2022. And we had put 50,000 for programs for 2022. So HCDPA only approved the funds to cover the remaining of my salary for 2022, which was what had been directed by the grant, was that half of my salary, all of my salary for 2022 comes from the ADLN grant. Just technically it's coming from the Housing Trust Fund for the second half of the year. So because the HCDPA only approved this for 2022, all I did basically was I moved those program funds, the 50,000 from 2022 to 2023 and up to that number. And then I moved this 5,000 to HCDPA to contingency. I'm just thinking that maybe we don't know what costs might come up. And so this might be better to have just a bigger line item here. And so that's kind of the first thing I wanted to show you all.
Can you just explain a little bit more? So I'm sorry. So HCDPA, they only approved a part of what, like what's the ramifications, I guess would be the word, of them only approving that part?
So basically they thought it was too late in the year. By the time they met to discuss this stuff, it was the second week of October. And they thought it was too late in the year to approve any programs for 2022. And also like they had to report, it's a little weird because we're kind of retroactively writing our budget. And so you have to give your report to the state, like, I don't know if I think it's 60 days before the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And so they thought the timeline was too short to do all that.
Okay, but it doesn't affect anything materially about what you're receiving or anything like that. It's just
the only thing it really affected was that I was hoping we could, based on the conversations that this group had in October, I was hoping that we could continue funding Hudson Roots through the end of the year. And so that was not, we weren't able to do that. But if this group agrees to keep funding Hudson Roots at a small amount, we could get that approved so that in January, we could give them funds and they could, if they know that that's coming in January, then they could help some more families through the end of the year and just kind of pay themselves back with those funds in January. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is like what looks like here. The way this changes, this is what I'd sent you all, we talked about in September. Basically, the revenue, the total amount for 2022 is much smaller. It's just my salary and fringe. In 2023, what I just did is the city of Hudson, the BEA decided to give us 25,000. So I lowered our estimate. We requested 50, they gave us 25. And I increased our revenue that we hope to get. We don't know from where yet, whether it's going to be grants or donations or, philanthropic. But my goal for us to get for this year is 30,000, some new kind of funds. And then I adjusted the expenses. So just the program grants increased from 100,000 to 150,000, moving this from the 2022 line to the 2023, and just increased the contingency because it looks like HCDPA, like they were already paying them leftover money for the grant for 2022. So that 5,000 I had here moved to contingency for 2023. I want to pause and ask if anyone has any questions or thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm curious about the HCDPA overhead expenses. How are those determined?
So
do we have a separate audit, or are we part of their audit?
we're part of their audit.
Okay. And are they, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
It's okay.
Is Christine Shale billing us? I mean, we're not just paying some abstract number for her services, right? I mean, we're being billed accordingly. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so the way we came up with this number is two ways. So Sarah Black and I looked through how much groups tend to pay, like a fiscal sponsors is usually about 10%, but then we also, we went through, we counted up all of the bookkeeping fees for her time and the audit expenses. And it adds up to about that for the year. The
Okay.
audit is the big one, the
Okay.
grant,
'Cause
yeah,
they shouldn't get any fees beyond that. I mean,
yeah,
this is not like a typical sponsorship, fiscal
Right.
sponsorship.
yeah. So
Yeah.
most of this is to cover the audit, and for Sarah's bookkeeping costs. And then I am including, so Sarah and I are keeping track of this in terms of like how much we're using. So Chris Shale's billing is separating her time
Okay.
for housing trust fund stuff, and we're
Great.
keeping track of this too. And
Good.
it's something that, the way Sarah and I discussed it was that we would kind of do one payment and track how it's going, and then we can adjust it for the second half of 2023.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm so troubled by this HCDPA relationship. They really,
Yeah.
I mean, they should have very little say in what this group does.
Yeah,
how
I'm
they
also,
spend- and how they spend their money.
that does seem, well, unless it sounds like what you're saying is that it was like thoroughly procedural about, like that they weren't necessarily trying to have like subjective input on what decisions were being made. It was more just like sticking to the rules, keeping everything on the rails kind of thing. But
Yeah.
but it is, not great that it impacts like our ability to support the program.
Right, have they approved the 2023 budget yet?
No, because, and some of this is just, it's annoying and it's frustrating, and I think we just have to like kind of iron it out in the next couple of months. But since they didn't approve that, then I didn't think, it's like I had to come back to you all. And
Okay, no, what I mean is, are they gonna be shocked when they see these numbers?
they shouldn't.
Excuse me?
They shouldn't be, no.
Well, I hope not, and I think we should be there to make sure that they understand they really have no say in it.
Yeah. I mean, they've seen these tables, like the same, I've sent them all of this and I presented on it. Their problem was just about the debt, like Rebecca said it really well about the procedural. Yeah. So to kind of get into this a little bit more about this, I think this is pretty, like, in terms of the operating cost, Tom just kind of addressed that. The salary and fringe, so the BI and HCPA and everybody did approve the salary that you all recommended for me. So this is that salary plus the fringe. So thanks for that support. The contingency, I just said that like I think it'd be good to have more in this spot. So the two things I want to discuss now is this program grants line and this contingency line. So revenue goal is to get 30,000 in 2023, and to find a way to get new revenue about 80,000 for 2024. It's a little ambitious, but we're gonna try for it. So here's some things I want to talk about. So I just kind of discussed this with Tom about the HCDP operating overhead, about saying we're budgeting at 10,000, but I don't think we pay it in lump sum. I think we should pay it kind of by either the quarter or by June and December, and like kind of see how much we've spent on bookkeeping, auditing, legal, etc., and adjust if we've underspent. Sure. Yeah, Claire.
Sorry if you've already answered this, but can you just explain why there needs to be a relationship with HCDPA? The Housing Trust Board can't be a standalone function?
Yeah, we've had a lot of attorneys looking at this, and basically, in the future, like maybe we can create a new nonprofit or something, but the way the grant was set up and the way the city received the ADLN funds and HCPA received them, like the city and HCPA have to have, they have to have a certain level of accountability and ownership over that. And so HCPA was the best vehicle. Yeah, and I think I think what we came to was basically it's a solution for now, and over the next couple of years, we can look at creating a different standalone body to remove some of these extra layers of bureaucracy. So then, okay, so that the overhead we talked about, it's HCPA, talked about my salary. So let's do contingency next. So I think that something we could maybe do is if we can maybe think of a list of kind of like pre-approved costs that maybe HCPA that would fall under this, then perhaps we could also think of things that we don't necessarily need HCPA to approve every single thing. So for example, if I know, like an example is like, if we post that we're applying for a CDBG grant, we have to post that in the newspaper, and that's like about $150 for the legal fees. I feel like we need a little bit more flexibility to move quickly, and knowing that if certain fees are kind of pre-approved, then we can go ahead and expend them without having to get, and that's pretty reasonable. I think even things like, I don't know, some basic office supplies for me, like I don't really have a city budget line. So want to know what you all thought about that.
Well, you have a checking account, right?
What?
Do you have access to a checking account?
Mm-mm.
You don't?
No.
Ooh,
No, because the funds come through HCDPA.
right.
Yeah.
So I think a set aside is reasonable, so you can get those small things, if you will, done.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Wait, what was that? What did Jeff say?
He thinks a set aside is reasonable to get small
A
things
set
done.
aside.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because most bylaws will have a certain amount you don't need approvals for. You have a limit.
Yeah. So, okay. So then I think I'll ask Chris Shale like what that would look like. So we can do that with HCPI and kind of outline what, amounts and what it would be used for.
Yep.
Okay. So then the big thing is discussing program grants. So again, that like proposed budget was for 150,000. This is what I'm suggesting and want to get your feedback. So doing maybe 50,000 for some round one projects that we can get started in January. So Hudson Roots being one that we had discussed, maybe looking for some studies. This group had discussed doing like an overlay zoning that would allow for ADUs, for example, or looking at studies for like a property tax exemption for people renting to below market rate. We could discuss other things, and those be like basic things that would not be open to applications. Just this board decides that those are good uses of funds, and we recommend those to HCPA to approve, and we can start that in January. And then meanwhile, in January and February, we work on building up the community capacity and knowledge of these funds, and I'll open it up for applications for like a round two funds. I'm thinking maybe we have 100,000 available, but we don't have to use all of it if we don't get great applications. And if we might not get a lot of interest as a new housing trust fund, and then we might do a round three if we have remaining funds. And that round two would be a competitive process. We'd use the grant guidelines we've been working on. I could offer technical assistance to people in, working through that grant guidelines. And then you all as an advisory committee would review them and select the projects that you would want to fund. And that would be submitted to HCPA to approve. So that's my thought. Would need to hear everyone's feedback.
Can I just ask for the, so the CDBG contribution is crossed out because there isn't any?
That's crossed out because that's for us to discuss. I don't know, I still don't know how much we need. And I guess if we only have 50,000, the houses are looking like it's gonna be about 50,000 per house. So if we want to do these other things, it's leaving 5,000 or 10,000. That's just not going to do very much for that particular project. But we can discuss that more.
And could I just ask another like pre-question, because I think it's great if we can put money into policy
Mhm.
too. And so, so you mentioned in the previous meeting that I was in with you this evening about how the consultants have, I think what you said is that they're almost ready to present on their findings on like various, on a few of the, like, for example, the vacancy law, or and other thing like inclusionary zoning.
Mhm. Yeah.
And yeah, like I would love to see funds go towards that.
Okay. So the ones at the inclusionary zoning, hypothetically, we wouldn't need any more funds.
Okay.
Hypothetically, like this, what they did would be enough information for the council to debate the policy.
Mhm.
Vacancy, hypothetically, same thing, where they're providing different, the vacancy law, meaning, just want to make sure we're all on the same page, talking about the vacancy law that governs buildings that are uninhabited or vacant and whether or not it's effective. And so their policies would be like their research is like offering suggestions on how we can improve our law. So that also hypothetically wouldn't need any funds.
Okay. It's interesting though, because I don't know if Tom is still here. Doesn't look like he is. But you know, part of the issue with the vacancy law is having a person to enforce it. And so I don't know, it occurs to me as like, I mean, that and other things that are not enforced would be an interesting possibility for
Yeah.
channeling some like funds towards staffing, I guess is what I'm thinking about. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. The vacancy law, yeah, that one's tricky. I think at the end of the day, if the law doesn't, I don't know if staffing will solve it. But
Obviously, no, the law has to be good. I just meant
Yeah.
once it is good.
yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Okay, other thoughts? And again, I'm sorry that this is the first time y'all are seeing this. I just wasn't able to email, and with FOIA, I can't use my personal email, so I'm sorry. So maybe the first question is, what do you all think of doing like a round 1 and a round 2?
I was gonna say, I'm in favor of the setup. I think it's a good idea.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
You know, because it'll
I
help
agree.
us iron out issues.
Okay. Yeah, and I think some of the feedback I heard from people was, we want to support policy and not just development work. And so we can kind of hit that. And then I also, I do think it's going to take us some work to help build up good candidates for some of the bigger funds. Okay. So then I guess the next step is we don't have to, we can just approve this budget line and have HCP approve it, and then it would be a competitive application process. HCP would approve the final candidates. This 50,000, I think that we could either hammer this out now and give suggestions to HCPA, or like give recommendation for them to approve at their December meeting, or we could discuss this, think about it a little bit more, and vote on something in January, and they could approve it at their January meeting. Would you all like some more time to think about what we're actually approving? Because this one we do need to be more specific, like Hudson Routes or a study for, overlay zoning, etc.
I'm not totally clear on the question.
Okay, sorry. Would you all like the rest of December to get very specific things would you like the rest of December to think about this and vote on it in January? Or would you like to do that today? Vote on it today?
Let me ask a question,
Mhm.
please. Hudson Roots, that is funding for helping folks that may be in need of, rental assistance, things of that nature. That's what that.
Yeah.
Okay, so no, I definitely like that. I think we've spoken about it before, so I like that.
Okay.
Because there are people who still need assistance, and we need a mechanism to assist.
Yes. Thanks. And Promise Neighborhoods is still interested in administering that, and they're taking 0% for the administering, and it's a straight, all the money goes to residents.
That's so good.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't feel like I'm going to have any brilliant different ideas about where this money should go by
Mhm.
January. Like it seems to me like we're covering, with the exception of just getting more specific, as you're saying, about like different policy
Mhm.
issues. So I don't know. I'm comfortable with it as it is.
Can you just expound a little bit on the overlay zoning, what the purpose is?
Sure.
Maybe that'll help.
Yeah, sure. So this was discussed at the October meeting, and the purpose would be the purpose is that we are a couple years out from rewriting our zoning code. Right now, we're in the process of getting our funds together for a comprehensive plan, and that takes a couple years. And then a new zoning code follows that. But in the meantime, we want to see if we can allow for some more flexible zoning that would allow for smaller sized units, for allowing multifamily housing in areas where it's currently not, and allowing for like accessory dwelling units to help increase the supply of housing in areas in the city where it's currently not zoned for.
Right, I remember now. Yep. So I'm definitely in favor of that setup, the way it is currently, and then that leaves us but $5,000, I guess, could be.
Yeah, the other thing maybe is if we
Either go
wanted
into round two, or we can.
Yeah, another thing too, if we want, is if we like the Hudson Roots, we could agree on that, and I could have HCPA vote on that. And if I know, because the October meeting, we only had a couple people present. If I know more of the board's interested in these things, I can get a sense of quotes from like what these would actually cost. And I could write a bit more of a pitch of explaining what they are. And then we might have better informed what the numbers would be. We could just leave it like right now as like policy work, or and get more specific in January about what that actually, like how much per topic.
I'd prefer that, Michelle. I mean, I don't think it's a big deal either way, like
Okay.
whether it's we decide today or next meeting. But I think a little bit more fleshing out how the money will be spent, I think would just be a little bit more helpful for you.
Okay. Okay. And the reason I got 35,000 is because Joan Hunt from Promise said they've been spending between 3,000 and 5,000 a month, and this would be about like 3,000 a month for the year, and we could see about helping get more money come the summer if they needed it. That's where that came from. Okay, so then we'll go with, this is like our tentative budget, and I'll flesh it out more for January, but I can kind of give HCPA the heads up that we'll have this kind of round one structure and this round two structure. Okay, any other comments or thoughts on budget before I move along?
I just wanted to mention too, if we're pretty sure about doing it this way, I think we might want to move forward just so we can have it set up just in case, sometimes HDCPA has postponements or whatever, which causes a delay for us. So I'd rather get the information to them sooner than later, so that we can get, a decision made and we can move forward. That's my recommendation.
Okay. Would you guys like to vote on approving this overall budget, and program grants, we could say, if you want to vote on it, 35,000 for Hudson Roots, 15,000 for policy study, and then 100,000 for the competitive grants. And that policy study we can return to in January to identify specifically what it is and how much. If you would all like to vote on this, someone can suggest a motion.
I'll do that. I'll make a
Okay.
motion.
A second.
Okay. So we are making a motion to approve this budget for 2023. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Usha or Angelique?
Yeah,
Is that an aye or any questions?
I said aye.
Oh, sorry, couldn't hear you.
Maybe we should do, if it's the budget, maybe we should do a roll call vote, right?
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, so if you are in favor of this budget, Usha.
You know, I can hardly hear.
Oh, okay.
I think I have to abstain.
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry, Usha. Let's see, Dustin,
Aye.
okay. Jeffrey,
Aye.
okay. Angelique,
Aye.
Rebecca,
Aye.
and Nick.
Aye.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, I think we lost Tom. Right, Tom? Okay. Okay, cool. Then we've approved this. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so we can move on to our second agenda item, which is discussing. I want to discuss the 2023, like our roadmap. And basically, I want to throw the idea out to you all about what do you all think about making committees? The idea being that there's a lot of work we're going to have to do that's a little more specific. And I think it might be hard to do it once a month on this meeting. And maybe we had a couple committees. We wouldn't meet regularly every month, but I would meet with those committees and work on the projects that we're working on. And then the regular full board would meet probably quarterly. And those committees that I'd be thinking of, one would be like a financial one whose job would be, actually, let me share my screen. That'll be easier. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to get the. So one would be the grant committee, who would be working on kind of helping build capacity and like in the community for people to apply for those awards, and they would do a first round review. One would be like engagement and outreach. So if we need to do community stakeholder meetings to kind of update our housing needs throughout the year or do outreach events. One would be revenue and budgeting. So they would help identify like grants or other like long-term funding sources, because a big goal for 2023 is for us to find long-term funding. And they could do some more detailed work on that and kind of do like a first pass with the budget with me. And then the last one would be kind of like the strategic planning and data collection, because part of this group too is going to be like collecting data on our projects and seeing how that affects our housing needs. So we don't have to do this. It's just an idea. If you think that would be helpful for us to maybe have some members focus on more targeted areas of the work. And the way it kind of looks throughout the year is that I kind of color coded the different like types of work or committees. It looks different throughout the year. Like obviously January and February is focusing more on getting people ready to apply for the awards. And then the summer is doing more of like tracking how it's going and doing some community engagement. And then end of year is a little bit more of collecting data and analyzing how it's gone and making like our strategic plan and budget for the following year. So the work kind of shifts throughout the year. So opening up for y'all to offer any thoughts of what you think.
I think that's such a great idea.
Okay.
And I would like to be on the
Yeah,
grants
I really
committee
think
and over.
it's a good idea.
Oops, sorry. I think
And
okay. I think someone was speaking. I didn't hear it.
No, I was saying, yeah, I think it is a good idea. At least then we'll know more about what's going on and really be able to dig in. So yeah, I'm definitely with it.
Okay. Cool. Other thoughts?
In agreement as well.
Okay.
Me
Um,
too. Mm.
Okay. And I think we're 8 people, well, not counting me, but y'all are, or no, you're 7. You're 7. And I know the mayor and Tom had met some people, and I think Rebecca had some ideas. We might bring the board up to 9 and as well, so that might help too. And it'll be easier if we have, a committee of 3 people to arrange a meeting and meet in person or something to like work through some stuff and have a longer work session. Because I know the hour that we have together once a month, the time gets eaten up pretty quickly. So what I can do is kind of write up a description of what each committee would do and kind of when in the times of the year it's more active and you all can think about it. And then in January, we kind of maybe, self-select, or if you know beforehand, like I'm really interested in, grant awards, or I'm really interested in budgeting, let me know in advance. And we can figure that out in January. How does that
Sounds good.
sound? Okay.
Sounds good.
Cool. And yeah, so just so we know, like we're playing catch up because we got started in the summer basically. So one of the things I want to work on is kind of make a strategic plan, nothing big, but just, kind of identify our key needs or goals for the year, and work on that throughout December and January and get that approved for February. And in January, look at those policy awards, those what policy studies we want to fund, like we just mentioned, and discuss maybe hosting, like what do we have to do to help make sure we get good applications when we open up funding. So that's kind of what I'm looking for us to accomplish in January. So for example, what I mean by that is, do we want to maybe host like an information session for small developers about what grants might be available to them if they wanted to do like a 2 or 4 building rehab project? Or do we want to try and build relationships with a REPCO or Hudson River Housing? I've been talking with them one-on-one, but do you want to kind of show them as a board, like we have funds, if you're interested in coming in our area and applying for funds for home ownership projects or other support, things like that. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about when I talk about engagement events. Okay, so 641, the last thing I wanted to hit was those grant guidelines you all sent. So thank you very much. Heard from most of you with feedback. So what I did was I pretty much highlighted the areas for discussion where people didn't really agree. And we're not going to get through it all tonight, but I want to kind of hit some of those, and we can finish this in January, because we don't need to have these ironed out just now. So we'll just try and get through as much as we can. Okay. So again, just as a reminder, these grant guidelines are basically the criteria we'll use to judge who should be awarded housing trust fund money. And one set of criteria is for like people doing non-development work. So whether it's, something like Hudson Roots, or they're assisting people in some way, or policy work, something like that, like capacity for an organization to perform housing work. And the other type of grant is actually for development, whether it's new development or rehab work. So let me pull that up. actually, okay, never mind. I'll just read it from what I have. I realize my notes are probably gonna be more confusing for you trying to follow along. Okay, so the first question I want to discuss is we talked about should these awards be open to just nonprofits? And the thing is, it could be a yes or no answer, or it could be a point system where if you are a nonprofit, you automatically get 5 points. If you're a for-profit organization or you're a person who's like an individual who's not organized, but you could provide strong reasons of why you would, be a good fit for these funds, then you can get less points. So the answers I got from you all were very varied. Some people said just nonprofits. Some people felt that having for-profit could incentivize for-profit organizations to target like vulnerable populations. And there was also, so let's open up this for discussion, what you all think, if this should be just for nonprofits or if we should be open to different types of organizations and for-profit.
Can we
So-
talk about, sorry, what kinds of for-profit things might approach us? Like, I can't even imagine, it's hard for me to, you mean just like real estate developers, basically?
It could be real estate developers. It could also be organizations that, yeah, that's a big one, real estate developers. If you think about groups that might use, I don't know, they might have like a for-profit arm, and they might have a philanthropic piece of the organization that does more mission-oriented work, but it could be a company.
So when I answered the question, I definitely looked at, I was thinking in terms of developers, and I thought it'd be good to help diversify and attract other organizations and make them kind of pony up to what our mission is, as opposed to just leaving them out there on a island, So there are resources that they have, and if they want to participate in Hudson and do the things that we're interested in and help provide affordable housing, then they should, configure their programs to adopt to affordable housing. And that's why I said that, we should cater to or have a position where they can apply, but meet certain guidelines to try to get money.
It's funny, like, I guess having been through the whole sort of like the whole profit margin thing in the abstract, I think it would be better if we could avoid it, like, because it does, I mean, there's, on the one hand, I could see that if we have a rubric where we're grading, requests or applications, on how much is like, what aspect of this is really about affordable housing, about the creation of affordable housing, and like, then in a way that's a leveling concern, to have, like, if that's the top concern in any application review, that should do the trick. But then on the other hand, like, I'm just like, there's so many not-for-profits, why do we need to include for-profits? Because essentially they're they have a different orientation, their orientation is to make profit. So,
So I don't know if you saw, like, to Dustin's point, and I believe you're saying the same thing, like, nonprofits should have a priority, and I don't disagree with that. It's just that I think that we can also attract for-profit companies and make them, open their eyes to needs, as opposed to just saying, hey, you just go make some money somewhere else. Make them invest in Hudson. I mean, if they're interested, they have to meet certain qualifications to do so. We're not just going to let them come in and,
Right.
run amok. They're going to have to supply a certain amount of affordable housing or whatever we decide.
Claire has her hand up. I don't know if that's.
I was just gonna give an example of maybe having a specification that, like, for-profit industries would include places like Bliss is technically for-profit, or the Terrace is privately owned, instead of leaving it open to all sectors of for-profit, and maybe that would incentivize already existing affordable housing companies to maybe expand or figure out ways that they can, now that there's funding available through the city, they can better support their residents in ways that they might have thought about before but didn't have access to do that as a for-profit, because there's a lot of things that are only available to nonprofits already. So, you know, the Terrace is privately owned now. They have to figure a ton of things out on their own. And I think that that's really a disservice to the people that live in those areas. So I would just consider those when you think of for-profit industries, and like specify so that you're not opening it up to places like other real estate. Yeah, that's just my 2 cents.
Mhm.
I know you're having trouble hearing us, Usha, but do Usha or Angelique have any input?
You know, I can hardly hear. I hear
Okay.
like every fourth or fifth word.
Oh, okay.
I think, you know, when we discussed, I did say I didn't mind having, you know, for profit, because I felt that they could add something, you know, rather than all nonprofit, and that they would be responsible in what they did, you know. If they saw a need, they might be more capable of fulfilling that need in a shorter amount of time, in a more comprehensive way.
That's true. Mhm. But that's the thing. I mean, the time question with not-for-profit development is like, you know, it can really be a bummer.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, so I think for now, I'll just kind of note that there is a not unanimous, but a general feeling of keeping this open to for-profits, but having certain requirements and prioritizing nonprofits, which we can do with the scoring system by, you know, getting 5 points if you're a nonprofit, for example. So I'll come back to that, but thank you. The next thing was whether or not we want to support ongoing operations versus new ones. So again, it's a gradient score. Points could be like 1 to 5. You can get more points if you're already ongoing, and not just operation in terms of like, are you a brand new organization? But for example, Hudson Roots might get more points because, just for example, like we've already seen a year and a half of progress with them or good results versus when it's a brand new idea. So input I heard from you all, again, lots of different ideas. One was that new ideas are risky, but it depends on the size of the grant. So if it's a larger award, you're going to maybe want to be more careful versus if it's a small grant award, we can be more open to something new. Someone said treat them both alike. Someone said want to prioritize things that are working. Someone said we can look at, can we pair new ideas with longer term organizations? So I think it's a good point to discuss because we have a lot of disagreeing thoughts. And disagreeing, I say that in a good way. It means that, you know, we have a lot of different opinions, which I appreciate. So the question is, do we want to give more points to operations that have been that are already in progress and are ongoing versus new ideas or new operations?
You know, new ideas are, you know, they're very good. You always need new ideas.
Yeah.
You know, if things that have been done over and over, you know, if they're not succeeding just because they're doing it, it's not good enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. Other thoughts?
I guess I feel like we have a lot to work with already
Mhm.
right now, so I'm content for the time being to go forward with what we have. I mean, I'm curious to get us onto like, into a program of operations so that we can start basically approaching donors. You know what I mean?
I guess, so for example, like if we put out this funding, right? And we're like, we want you to apply and we're grading applications. If someone is saying like, I've never rehabbed a bedroom apartment before and I want to be a landlord to low income people, like, would that be a knock if they haven't done it before? Or if there's like, let's say there's, I don't know, an existing group that's like, I've never run, I don't know, a rental assistance program, or let's say Habitat wants to try something new they haven't done before. Would we give less points because it hasn't already been in progress or because it's a new thing?
Well, to me, I think that is also a case by case
Mhm.
thing, because it really does depend on like how well prepared do they seem
Yeah.
to actually do what they say they want to do. Like, can they put together a proposal that seems realistic and like,
Mhm.
Do they have any, like, what kinds of backgrounds do they have? Things like that.
Yeah.
Like, if it's just, yeah, like how much legs does their idea seem to have? But I think, I'm sorry, I totally misunderstood the question previously, but
Sorry.
yeah, like, I think we should definitely encourage new ideas, because as Usha was saying, yeah, no, totally. Like, I would hope that this could be inspirational to some people in Hudson, like,
Mhm.
to want to try to come up with something that hasn't been tried before. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So.
Yeah, and I think the new ideas are good. I just think we're gonna probably have somewhat of a preference, or maybe we should, for experience. Because we do want to make sure that there's proper allocation and distribution.
Yeah. Okay, so I think based off the input of you all, we would maybe scratch, are you ongoing or not, as a criteria, and really beef up people's explanations of their project. Is it well thought out? Like,
what if
qualifications?
I just had a little idea of my own. What if we could create a program that, because okay, a lot of times the question has been like, when I was trying to work on an inclusionary zoning law, there was this sort of balancing issue about incentivizing landlords to want to, like, a lot of landlords will be like, well, you guys need to incentivize us to want to rent like for less than market. And so in terms of the new ideas thing, like, if we could actually develop a small program like that specifically is for giving landlords in Hudson incentive, and I'm sorry if this is exactly what you've already been saying, but like something where it's like for new people coming in and buying up all this stuff, like if they could be incentivized to essentially like do their own inclusionary program by something that we could do.
Yeah, so that is one of the policy ideas that we had. That was included in like one of the ideas to fund looking into.
Okay, so to actually create like a program within the trust fund that provides incentive, or was it more on like they have to apply sort of on a case by case basis?
So what we had discussed was looking at, can the city give a tax reduction if you are renting below market rate?
Okay, so that would be the city-based version. I guess I was just thinking of like, could the trust fund do like if it's going to take like 5 years to pass inclusionary zoning or something? Could
it? I see what you're saying. We can think about that and talk about them more. I think that sounds a little tricky in terms of like paying some benefit to landlords to. I think what's tricky is that you get into our landlords, like, if I understand your idea about incentivizing landlords, which I guess sounds like giving money to landlords.
But I more was thinking about, like, if we're talking about programs that people can apply for with like applications that people can put together, if the applications would be like, yeah, I have a 4-unit building and I'm interested in making one of the units lower income housing, like that's where my mind was going.
I mean, I think we could do like some kind of info session or like support of like, what does that look like, or like what other sources of grants can you access from the state or for, for energy or whatever. I don't think we can pay people to do that, because then you kind of get into like, then why won't the landlord just like be like, oh, I need $3,000 to, now I need $5,000. Like they're, I think that gets really tricky in terms of but I think we can think of like, how could we support like good landlords? I think that's something to think about. Okay, so this was a lot to get through, so I did not expect to get through all this tonight, and we had a full board and we lost most people along the way. It's 7, but we passed a budget and we discussed committee structures and we kind of ironed out some of these grant guidelines. So some of this stuff I'll send you more things to look at and review in preparation for January. But before we go, does anyone want to kind of share any thoughts you have on your mind?
Clear. I don't have anything.
Okay. Thank you, Usha, for sticking with us, even though I know the tech has been difficult. January will be hybrid, so in person and Zoom.
Very good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I appreciate you all. Thank you for all your thoughts and your time. My email will still probably be down for the next day or two, but at the end of the week, I'll send some follow-up. And yeah, thank you, everybody. Hope you have a good night.
Good night.
Okay.